Welcome into another edition of Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery. Today on the show, don't be mad that the Braves are beating all the bad teams. Do we really care about the NBA draft? And tonight is the next step in Atlanta's journey as being a world-class sports city. All of that coming up. It's Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
We welcome you into this Thursday edition of Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. We ask you to head over to youtube.com, put at Locked On Sports Atlanta into your search browser. When you find the page, subscribe to it. Leave us a comment there if you would, please. Of course, we are free and available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, so download us there, Spotify, Odyssey, whichever one is your favorite. Leave us a 5-star review and always follow me on my personal Twitter page. That would be at JMCH316. Well, the Braves did it again last night. 14 in a row have not lost in the month of June thus far. And now with an off day, they go to Chicago to play the lowly, dreadful, awful pond scum, that moldy mildew that gets on the inside of a fish tank when you take the water out of it, Chicago Cubs. Now, this is funny because this has become the narrative for New York fans, Philly fans, Dodger fans, some sports fans in general. Well, they're only beating the bad teams. Now, remember over a month ago when I talked about that, I told y'all over a month ago to circle June 2nd on your calendar because that would be the start for the Braves when things would start to balance out between them and the Mets. And it was specifically related to the schedule. The fact that the Braves would start 4 games in Colorado, then take on the Oakland A's, then take on the Pittsburgh Pirates, then take on the Washington Nationals. They would have a stretch of 13 games where they were playing some of the worst teams in baseball. On the flip side of that coin, the Mets were going to start a 13-game stretch where they were going to play some of the top teams in baseball. Now, when we told you the Los Angeles, or as I call them, the California Angels, they were one of the better teams in baseball at the time. But they had to go to the LA Dodgers, to the San Diego Padres, to the California Angels, then come back home to, at the time, was the division-leading Milwaukee Brewers. Now, things obviously changed. California went on a long losing streak, fired their manager. The Milwaukee Brewers have struggled of late. They've dropped out of first, and the St. Louis Cardinals, who are red hot, are now in first. But it doesn't change the fact that those are still good teams in Major League Baseball. And I said that the balance of the schedule would start to flip itself out because the Mets had played a bunch of scrubs and stuff like that. So now everybody's got the narrative of, well, the Braves are doing this against all of the bad teams. Oh, are they? Isn't everybody doing that? Let's take a look at the New York Mets, for instance, okay? Let's look at who the Mets have beat this year. The Mets have 41 wins, okay? 17 of those, almost half of their wins, 17 out of 41. So do the math. What's that? 45% of their wins are against 2 teams, Philadelphia and the Washington Nationals, who they're 8-2 against this year. They've won 8 out of 10 games against the Nats. They've also beat Arizona 4 out of 6 times. And look, the one good team that they have beaten, the significance is the St. Louis Cardinals. They're 5-2 against. But the Mets have loaded up on wins against bad teams. Let's flip over to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Oh, the Dodgers, who, by the way, have 39 wins, have 9 of those wins against the low-life, dreadful, pond scum Arizona Diamondbacks. Oh, they've played the Cubs as well. They're 3-0 against the Cubs. Oh, they've played the Cincinnati Reds. They're 4-0 against the low-life, hapless AAA Cincinnati Reds team. The one team that's funny is they're 1-5 against the Pirates. Unbelievable to think. But this narrative about the Braves beating bad teams, that's what all the good teams do. How do you think the Dodgers get to 105 wins? How do you think the Mets or any other team are going to get to 95, 98, or 100 wins if you don't beat the bad teams? What are they supposed to do? lose to those teams, you know what happens when you lose to those teams like the Braves were doing in the early part of the season? You find yourself 10.5 games back in the division in May. All the good teams, when they play the other good teams, are going to be pretty much on par with one another. Look at the Dodgers and Mets record against the really good teams. It's 2-1, 1-2, 2-2. You're not going to go, you're not going to play the LA Dodgers and go 15-4 against them. You're not going to play the Mets and go 16-3 against the Mets. Those teams you'll be pretty balanced against if you're one of the better teams in baseball, because they're the better teams in baseball as well. That's why when you get to the playoffs, a lot of these series go 5, 6, 7 games because teams are pretty balanced. And while I understand that you don't see the Cubs and the Pirates, and the Reds in the playoffs, you won't get to the playoffs if you don't beat those teams. You're supposed to beat the hapless teams. You're supposed to beat. I got news for you. You think anybody's going to fuss and moan with the Mets in a couple of weeks when they load up with the Miami Marlins? Oh, well, they're not too bad. They stink. Their best guy is a pitcher that they'll probably end up trading. Alcantara's maybe the Cy Young leader right now in the clubhouse. He'll be gone, whether all-star break or trade deadline or by next year, because that's what they do. And they'll go back to being their hapless organization like they already are, and they'll just keep funneling their pieces away. Remember 5 years ago when the Marlins had Yelich and Ozuna and Gordon and this guy and that guy, Real Muto? Remember they had that whole group of guys. Oh, they're the next great friend. Then they just dispatched everybody off it. Everybody got dispatched. So they're always going to be a low-tier organization. So, again, it's funny to think that you penalize a good team for doing what they're supposed to do. What happened for the Braves, and as I explained to you, is that they had a run of bad teams all in a row. Now, Major League Baseball didn't sit up in some laboratory and mix chemicals together and say, okay, we're going to put all of these bad teams in a row for the Braves, and we're going to put all of these good teams in a row for the New York Mets. It just is one of those scheduling things. It's one of those quirks in the schedule. But I told you that this would how it would work itself out. Look, I was hoping that the Braves would go 11-2 in that stretch. They were 13-0 in this stretch. Okay. I thought the Mets might go 5-8 in this stretch. Well, after losing last night, the Mets are 6-6 in that 13-game stretch that we talked about. So either today they'll be 7-6 if they beat the Brewers, or 6-7 if they lose today. They're still going to be better than I thought that they were. But don't get it twisted about the idea of, well, you're just beating the bad teams, because you're supposed to. All of the good teams load up on bad teams. Arizona, Washington, the Marlins, the Cubs, the Reds. Y'all play, everybody in the National League plays all the same teams. And especially the Mets, they play all the same teams that the Braves will play, interleague and otherwise. So this notion about loading up on bad teams when that's what everybody else in the National League has done is, as I like to say, bunk, bull, and malarkey, and that's not a law firm. The Braves are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And we'll see if they can keep this streak going, but I have a feeling they're not going to lose any of these games in Chicago either, because they stink as well. All right, when we get back, 1 week from today is the NBA draft. Are we excited about that here in Atlanta? We'll next Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery on Lock Atlanta.